Look, I'm very happy to be here, and if you doubt that, check the temperature in Chicago today. My staff and I will be out in lounge chairs outside the hotel catching sun here later because it's about 20 degrees warmer. I'm here, and my message is going to be pretty simple because I'm just a simple tool maker. And I'm going to say America is a great country. It has been made so by the middle class achieving the American dream. But today, that's challenged. That's somewhat challenged. In fact, we are in a conflict, a competition to achieve that dream. And the greatest weapon we have in that competition is career and technical education. Now, as befits a state whose, motto is labor omnia vincit, labor conquers all, this state is among the most advanced in that. You have great leadership. America works in the new minimum. Governor Fallon has really been among the forefront of that, and I mean that really. So let's give her a round of applause, because she really... And then you have an extraordinary technical career and technical school system here. And it's no surprise, the universe being in order, that you came out of the recession faster than anyone else, I think, among the top 4 in the country. But there is more to do. And the people in this audience, business and government and education, can work together to make that happen, because it has never been more important than right here today. Snap-on comes naturally to this discussion. I'm going to give you a brief summary of Snap-on. Snap-on's a tool company. It was founded in 1920. In 1920, there were 7.5 million vehicles on the road. There's 300 million vehicles on the road today. And the auto industry was just starting, and the repair industry was really just starting. Nobody knew what a repair mechanic skills would have to have, or what tools he would use. Comes an engineer from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, who gets a great idea. Take 5 handles, different configurations, a T, an ellipse, and so on, and put them together with 10 sockets of different dimensions and fashion them so they snap on interchangeably. He said those 5 handles did the work of 50 tools, and he was right, and he revolutionized tool sets all over this country, and that tradition of innovation has echoed down 9 decades for Snap-on to the 65,000 different products we have today. And he built the products out of those tools out of the greatest steel, and that idea of quality echoes today. If you pick up a Snap-on tool, you will feel the same. But he did something else. He did something else which is even more important and more pertinent to what I'm speaking of today. He said to his salesman to go into the shop and lay those tools out on green felt as if they were as precious as surgeons' knives, implying if the technician or the mechanic owned those tools, he would declare to the world the dignity of his work and display his pride to all. And that has been at base of what Snap-on does ever since, the dignity of work and the pride in that work. This is what has been most important to us and is why we come naturally to this. And of course, over the 9 decades, we have changed immensely. We now have 11,000 employees. We have 3,476 franchisees. That number is written on my shorts, so I know it. And all over this country, we have hundreds of direct salesmen. We are in 2,500 technical institutions. We have 27 factories around the world. But despite that, 80% of what we sell off these vans is made here in America. And a hand tool is more than half labor. We are an American company. It's fun to be the Snap-on CEO. You have all kinds of great experiences. I went back to a Little League reunion. Ever go to a Little League reunion? If you think there's dispersion of people after a high school reunion, try a Little League reunion. These guys haven't seen each other since they're 9 years old, and they're all over the place. There was a couple people who had come from Sing Sing for the reunion. But look, true story. But they found out I was from Snap-on. They didn't know what I did for Snap-on. They still think I drive a truck. And I was a celebrity. It made me feel great. So I flew from my home, my boyhood home, back home, and that evening I went to a dinner with the Snap-on people, and sitting next to me was an executive, a wife of an executive, and she leans over to me and she says, "Nick, is it true you knew President Bush at school?" I said, "Yeah, I did." Says, you knew him? I said, well, he wasn't really a friend of mine, but I did play basketball with him every day. She said, you played basketball with President Bush every day at school? I said, yes. She says, how do you think he feels about his son's presidency? This is a true story, by the way, you know? I had to sit quietly in the dark for like 6 or 7 hours after that. President George H.W. Bush graduated college in 1948, huh? This wasn't good. Not good. Not good. Anyway, Snap-on is an American company. And America is a great country. But you know, when you go to some places in the world today, in this country today, not Oklahoma, I suppose, but in Washington, when you hear the term American exceptionalism, it's viewed as out of vogue. A vestigial type of expression, reflective of another time that is not today's world. But I can tell you, Snap-on does business in 130 countries around the world, and I visit many of them in the service of the country, and I can tell you without equivocation or without question that America is still the greatest country in the world. It still is, and it is clear. We have 7 of the top 10 universities. We have we have 50% more roads than anybody else. And if you're a businessman like me and you like to think about customers, in 2006, 5.6 million people wanted to get green cards to come in this country. By 2002, that was 14.7 million. Tripled in just a few years, and that's 7 times the next largest queue. Apparently, some people think America's exceptional, and it is. It's a unique country. Why is it unique? It's unique for this reason. When you travel around the world, you see this. It's unique because we are not Americans because we have a common ancestry. We come from all over. Nor do we share a particular religion. All forms of worship are practiced here. Nor even a specific geography. The map has changed. Map of America has changed as many times as the stars on the states. America is America because we are based on ideas. Americans are Americans because we have certain beliefs, and among those most important is we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I want you to concentrate on the last one, pursuit of happiness. And what the founders meant with that was prosperity. The middle class, the American dream. And so it was, the idea of America pursuing the American dream. Now, why is it America, how has America become what it has been today? Well, David Landis, the Harvard professor who wrote Wealth and Poverty of Nations, and talks about why is it that certain nations are ascendant economically and in lifestyles over others. Talks about America. He says America was ascendant because of our middle class who knew how to make things and do things and get things accomplished and create prosperity. More recently, Paul Kennedy talks about World War II in the Engineers of Victory, and he says the soldiers created an important component of winning World War II. But there was another aspect of it. The people who were in the factories, people like Rose Hill Monroe, who came out of the hills of Kentucky and worked in a factory in Willow Run, Michigan, and she and her sisters created the industrial base. She became known as later as Rosie the Riveter. And she created the industrial base that allowed us to win the one war we could not afford to lose, middle-class Americans delivering us. It's written across the face of America. We've had brilliant people. People like Edison and Ford and Phillips here in Oklahoma. But think about what Henry Ford did. Here's what Henry Ford did. He had an idea, but he couldn't have brought his idea to fruition without amplifiers. And what he did was take the greatest commercial amplifier that was available 100 years ago. That was the American worker. Dedicated, energetic, enthusiastic, committed. He had a great idea and he got rich for it, and he should have. But along the way, he created the opportunity to create lives of prosperity and satisfaction and fulfillment for millions of Americans. And that's been played out. That story's been played out from sea to shining sea. People like Joe Johnson, who founded our company, did the same thing. People like Phillips, who came to Oklahoma, did the same thing. People like Edison did this. And it created the America we have. You see, America was created based not only on the brilliance of the few, but on the efforts of the many, the middle class achieving their dreams. But things are a little challenged today. If you get up in the morning and you read the Wall Street Journal, you would have seen today that it said half the counties in America have still to recover from the recession. If you read the New York Times, it would have said that the recession scars are still evident. If you read the Financial Times of London, it would have said Wall Street is doubting the earnings of the company. And if you read over the past few weeks, you would have seen things like the middle class is shrinking. And if you were in Washington, you would realize that Tyler Cohen's book, Averages Over, is the darling of the Washington cognoscenti these days. And what he says in that book is the American dream is slipping away. So what's happening? Don't we have the ideas? Are there no more Henry Fords? Well, my suggestion is there are. If by one definition you measure Nobel Prizes, there have been 876 Nobel Prizes awarded since the beginning, and we have 39% of them in America. Now, maybe we built up a lead at the beginning. You know, we scored heavy in the first half, like the Thunder sometimes. But in fact, that's not true, because in 2001, instead of 39%, we got 45%. And you guys might be worried about China, and China is a growing force. But of the 10 Chinese descendants who won Nobel Prizes, the vast majority have been American citizens. So ideas are available. Is it the workforce? Maybe the workforce is weak, you know, unions and all this stuff. Well, I have to tell you, when I walk through our Milwaukee, Wisconsin plant, which is a union plant, or Elizabethton, Tennessee plant, which is not a union plant, or the City of Industry plant in California, or Robesonia, Pennsylvania, or Olive Branch, Mississippi, or Carson City, Nevada, I see the same energy and capability and enthusiasm I imagine Henry Ford saw all those 100 years ago. So that isn't it. The problem is, here's the problem. When I walk through similar spaces in Shanghai, and Mumbai, and Santo Tome in Argentina, and Belarus, and Minsk in Belarus, I see those same characteristics, energy and capability and commitment. So those very American characteristics are no longer ascendant, they're no longer differentiating. We make no mistake about it. Ideas are being achieved, are being had. People are coming up with ideas. Nobel Prize say so. But in the competition to be the amplifiers, the commercial amplifiers for those ideas, commitment and energy and enthusiasm and dedication are no longer differentiating. What needs to differentiate you is capability. Capability, and that means career and technical education. And we have in this country a gap, a skills gap. The National Association of Manufacturers says there are 600 jobs that are going begging because of a skills gap. And they also say that two-thirds of the manufacturers in this country, 75,000 of them, say that the number one criteria for locating a new factory is skills of the local workforce. So career and technical education and the upskilling of America in this global competition, this global conflict has never been more important. And all of you can make a difference. Working together, business and government and education. I offer 3 ideas for this. One is, when you actually look at career and technical education, even in the enlightened state of Oklahoma, and I say that not lightly, the curriculums do not match specifically what business needs. Business needs to work together with educators to call in the airstrikes, to shape the curriculum. Educators need to be receptive to this. Snap-on has, one way to do this is Snap-on does this in our own corporation, we have now partnered. We started modestly in our own state and our own neighborhood, partnering with the Career and Technical College to try to create curriculums for certifications. Now that's grown to 100 colleges around the country. Francis Tuttle here in Oklahoma City, High Plains in Woodward, Oklahoma State University Institute of Technology in what is it, Okmulgee or something like that, right? Yes, I had trouble pronouncing that, but anyway, was it that bad? Sorry. Okay. But anyway, these schools are part of that network. And the idea is, our blueprint for this is for business to go and approach the school, engage the president, start out with a program, and then iterate around that. It can build into great things. We are evidence of this. I urge you all to do it because the curriculums need to be shaped for what is needed by you. You all feel this. It's one of the reasons why there's a skills gap. We call this demand-driven curriculums. One other factor, though, is educators need to act like jobs are important. The governor acts like jobs are important. She says jobs, jobs, jobs. I wish every educator in America had that same attitude. Sometimes I'm not so sure. I would say for educators, we should recognize that the goal of education, the goal of a university, the goal of a college is a career, not a degree. A degree can be a sideline of that. But if you get certified to do something and you can make a great living, that's a good thing too. So I think the primary measure for educators should be how many of your students do you put in good jobs because you have served your country and your constituency. Second point, a little more difficult. And this is, I think, business has to go into this because we have a social responsibility, I think, for our constituencies and for our stakeholders, not only to our stockholders, but also to our employees and to the communities we live in. And that's where we should get involved in this. And this is the second point. Career and technical education has a heck of a PR problem. A heck of a PR problem. You see, students, young people who go into these jobs often, or pursue these lines of study, often are seen to have settled for the consolation prize of our society. I said this in Washington, and in a think tank in Washington, and the audience pushed back and said it's not true. And I said, okay, how would you feel if your son or daughter told you he was going to be a car mechanic? A great job that delivers prosperity and stability and can't be offshored. And the silence in the audience, you could hear a pin drop. And the face of the people confirmed the answer. These jobs are what other people's kids do, you see. And the problem is, America has lost the respect for the dignity of work. And the reason why Tyler Cohen is saying the American dream is disappearing is we have allowed the American dream to be redefined as you can't be successful, you haven't achieved the dream unless you become an investment banker or a CEO or a college professor or a doctor or a TV anchor. But that actually isn't the American dream. That isn't what has delivered us from evil all these years. That isn't what has created the atmosphere that's gotten all the 14.7 million people standing in line for green cards. It has been the great middle who have pursued jobs of stability and prosperity for their families and fulfillment and, yes, dignity. We need to restore that. We need to restore the American dream to what it was. We need to raise again our respect for the dignity of work. And we need to change these jobs, these careers, from a consolation prize to an American calling, because there is no path to American prosperity in the future without an expanded middle class and an expanded group of people who are enabled and upskilled and capable of doing things. This is the lesson of the last 250 years for America. We need to do it again. And how to do that is the kinds of things that the governor is doing with America's Works and the new minimum and celebrating these people. You see, John F. Kennedy did this in 1960. Those of you who remember this, and I think in this audience looking around, not so many, but the thing is, John Kennedy got to the podium and said, we will go to the moon in 10 years, within this decade, and it is a national calling, and high school children all over this country envisioned themselves as enlisting in a national calling. If they became engineers or scientists, this can be done again. And you are doing some of it in Oklahoma. I applaud you for it. There are organizations who help doing this. I'm chair of an organization called Skills for America's Future, who tries to promote the upskilling of America and celebrate the dignity of people who do this kind of work. There's an organization with the red jackets here today, Skills USA, 300,000 people, young people in America who get trained by volunteer instructors in over 100 disciplines. They have competitions at a local, state, and national level. They award Olympic-like medals in front of 14,000 people, and they celebrate that achievement like they might be, say, celebrating quarterbacks. We need to do that because it has a PR problem, and these are the people who are the backbone of America. They deserve the dignity and respect and pride. And then finally, priority. You know, we need to actually prioritize this. It's one thing to talk about it. The governor actually prioritizes this. But I can go to Washington and walk up and down the halls of Congress or the halls of the Senate office building and go into any office and get any senator or congressman to say, I endorse technical education, right? Problem is, if you're a CEO, you realize what's going on. The ideas that come to me, they're all good. All the wacko ideas are wiped out before they get to me, actually. And so I can endorse anything anybody asks me to do. The problem is I only have energy and capital and effort to support a few of them. We need to lean on our leaders and say, you need to support technical education. Because what's happening today, they endorse it, but when push comes to shove, they're willing to sacrifice the interest of education on the altar of other priorities. I think you know the truth of what I'm saying here. We need to force them to say, this is our number one priority because it promotes jobs. And then let's look back at the business community. We need to say this too. The problem with the business community is, and there is a problem with the business community in supporting things, is in general, if you look at business community like the Chamber of Commerce or other things, in a lot of ways, and I don't mean to single out the Chamber, there are many other organizations or businessmen in general, is that we never saw a business favoring initiative that they didn't represent as being essential. If you watch the press and you watch business organizations react, that's what it is. We never saw an event, an item that we didn't see as essential. We have to prioritize, or our voice will never be heard. Because if you prioritize, if you support everything, if you endorse everything, you abdicate to others to make the choice. Well, I'm willing to choose technical education and tell you that I prefer technical education over, say, trade bills. I prefer technical education over adjusting the corporate income tax. And we pay over 30%. And those of you who know corporate taxes know that this is high. So we already pay a high amount. But I'm willing to say that technical education is important because it deserves the priority. So business needs to prioritize and demand that prioritization from the government so it gets proper support. So this is my message. America is a great country. And it's a great country because of the middle class and the achievement of the American dream. It has succeeded not only because of the brilliance of the few, but the efforts of the many. We are challenged today because we're in a global competition, a conflict, and our number one weapon in that conflict is career and technical education, which will upskill our workforce and allow them to differentiate them and win the competition to be the amplifiers for the ideas. Grow the middle class again. And to do that, as businessmen, as educators, as government people, we need to cooperate to shape the curriculums to be demand-driven. Call in the airstrikes so what kids are studying is exactly what's going to lead to a job. We need to change. We need to change the optical outlook on these jobs. We need to restore the respect for the dignity of work. We need to bring the American dream back to what made this great, that is prosperity and stability for a family in a great job, not necessarily a rock star job. And we need to change these consolation prizes to an American calling, a national calling. And then finally, we need to actually say that technical education is important. And like we all tell our employees, actually act like it. Act like it's important and walk the talk. And demand that our leaders, like Governor Fallon, also does that. We have to do that because there is no path to continuing American prosperity without a strong middle class, and right now it is shrinking. But career and technical education will, in fact, deliver it from evil. It's never been more important than this moment, this time, this place in America. So I'm going to finish by simply saying that Oklahoma is a place that has great leadership. I mean it when I say that the governor is at the forefront of this issue, and it is the most important issue. And for choosing her as your leader, for having the foresight to choose her as your leader, you have my congratulations. This is a state which has organized its career and technical education in a very advanced way, in an enlightened way. And you are leading the way, even though there's more to do, in advancing this and in helping the middle class. And for that, you have my admiration. And for allowing me and inviting me to be here and allowing me to talk about a cause which I consider to be both contemporary and compelling, and more important than any other for America, you have my thanks. Thanks, everybody, and have a great afternoon.